This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this Best of Bob Lowry episode, I'm going to talk to Bob Lowry about which chlorine type is stronger. There's a lot of myths out there about which chlorine type is stronger, and you may think that Trichlor is the strongest because it's 99% available chlorine. But does that mean that it's the strongest chlorine out there? And Bob Lowry unpacks this for you here. Available chlorine by weight, and you may be surprised of what the strongest chlorine type actually is. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. So I get this all the time. So someone says, liquid chlorine is really weak because it's only 12.5% compared to the Trichlor tablets, which are 99% available chlorine. What is the available chlorine percentage? How do you, get it from a dry chemical to a liquid chemical, or from Trichlor to Cal-Hypo? How's that calculated or compared? Because it's really confusing out there in the market. I've even seen manufacturers use their chlorine percentage to kind of beat down the competition.
Yeah, there's a confusing array of terms used when you describe how much chlorine is in a product. What people are used to is what we call a weight to weight percent. So if you put in a pound of something into 10 pounds of something, it's 10%. And so that's the way we are used to hearing things. But then there are what we call trade percent, which is a made up term. And then there is actually a volume to volume term, which is not weight to weight. It's a quart of something and 10 quarts of something. And it's not weight to weight. So there's different ways of describing it. But the practical thing is this: the amount of chlorine in a gallon of liquid chlorine is about 1 pound of pure chlorine. And in a pound of trichlor, it is about 90% of 1 pound. So you can either think of it as 90% of a pound, or it would take 1.15 pounds to equal 1 pound. Either way, so you can tell from that if something says it's 55% available chlorine on it, then that's compared to what 1 pound of chlorine is. Furthering the confusion is that years ago, when they tried to make a method of comparing chemicals, they said chlorine, pure chlorine, gas chlorine, when you put it in water, makes 100%. There's nothing in it, so it's 100%, right? Well, yes, but what happens is when you put pure chlorine in the pool, it is chlorine gas. And the formula for chlorine gas is Cl2, which means it's 2 atoms of chlorine. So when you put it in water, 1 atom makes HOCl, and the other atom makes HCl, acid. So technically, only 50% of that molecule of chlorine is making chlorine in the pool. The other one's making acid. But they assigned it a value of 100%. So now how do you compare, against chlorine gas? How do you compare it? That's the way it came about, and that's we use chlorine gas as a standard, but chlorine gas is technically only 50% of it is making chlorine in the water.
So is it safe to say that liquid chlorine compared to Cal-Hypo, Dichlor, Trichlor has a larger available percentage, even though it's a liquid, just based on the math that you were saying?
Yes, a pound of chlorine gas added to the water will give you whatever in the water. It would take, if you used trichlor, you would need to add like 1.15 pounds of it to get the same thing. And if you had a product that was 50% available, you'd need 2 pounds of it to equal 1 pound of gas chlorine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So and that's of dry products. When you get to liquids, it changes, because liquid is a weight percent.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, we just say there's a pound of chlorine in a gallon, a pound of pure chlorine in a gallon.
Or 12.5 liquid chlorine.
If it's 12.5%, if it's 10%, it doesn't have a pound. It's like, 9/10 of a pound.
Yeah, that's important for people to know the strength of the chlorine. So sometimes they can be fooled thinking that certain chlorines are more powerful just based on what you just said. And it is confusing. So even after you explained it, it's still really confusing.
Well, so a little bit further into what we're doing, technically trichlor, if you actually calculated the molecules in it, technically trichlor is about 45% chlorine, because we have to compare it to gas chlorine. We literally have to double it. And that's why the package says it's 90% available chlorine instead of saying that it's 45%.
Basically, for the average person out there, the chlorine that is attached to some product, and you're going to have a byproduct. Liquid chlorine has salt, Cal-Hypo has the calcium, Dichlor and Trichlor have the cyanuric acid. Is that correct?
Right. So everything is going to add something to the water that you may or may not have to deal with. Either cyanuric acid, sodium, calcium, something that you're going to have to build up or deal with. Yes.
And let's touch on the saltwater generators, because they're pretty popular and manufacturers are pushing them with the current trichlor shortage. People think, of course, they're not a chlorine producing device, but they are.
Chlorine generators, they actually make chlorine gas. But because it's being made in water, the chlorine gas dissolves right away and makes hypochlorous acid. So it technically makes chlorine gas. It also makes sodium hydroxide. It makes hydrogen gas. And so it makes those three things from salt that you add to the pool. And I often hear this: we have a salt pool, we don't use chlorine. And that couldn't be any farther from the truth. The fact of the matter is, if you have a salt pool, you're making chlorine. Most of the chlorine generators are capable of making about 1 pound of pure chlorine per day if they ran 24 hours a day at 100%. One of the things I've recently found out is that the controllers and all the electronics that are out there, sometimes the chlorine generators not getting the correct current, the correct voltage. And when it doesn't get the correct voltage, then it doesn't make that pound of chlorine. Mm-hmm. So the voltage, the DC current that it needs is critical. There is a specification for the the cells and how much current they need. And you can also then check it with a meter to see if it's getting the right amount of current. And we had a guy that had a 26,000 gallon pool, and he was having to run his chlorinator 100% 24 hours a day, and he was barely keeping up with it. And it wasn't because he was using so much chlorine. It should have been making 4 parts per million of chlorine per day in that pool, and it wasn't. It's important that you get the right current to the unit. But aside from that, you need the right salt level. If you get too much salt or too little salt, then there's a problem. Also understand that people say, well, this salt water is not good for you, or salt water is good for you, or it's only a little bit of salt, and so on. And the answer is, yeah, it's only a little bit of salt, but the fact of the matter is that it's only 1/10 of what's in the ocean. And the amount of salt that's in the pool is actually very close to the amount of salt that's in your tears. So swimming in it is not like swimming in the ocean. But people need to understand is that when the water goes out of the pool and sits on the deck or a handrail or anywhere around the pool, as long as it's still a liquid, no problem. But when the water evaporates away, it leaves the salt behind. And now you have 100% salt on whatever that water was on, whether it's aluminum, some of your travertine deck or whatever. It's like you took some Morton salt and poured on it. It's corrosive. Bonding becomes an issue. And what I mean about bonding is that you should have a common copper wire that connects each piece of electrical equipment to a ground, and not just the pipe that runs in the ground. Better to have it on a stake or a rod that's driven into the ground. If you don't do that, because you put salt in the water, it conducts electricity better. And so you can have problems with electrolysis and other problems in the pool because it's not bonded correctly. So it needs to be bonded, and you need to make sure that the pool has done that, because with electricity and the pool and so on, your pool is actually a giant low voltage battery. And if you don't ground it, guess what happens? It's the same thing as leaving the batteries in your flashlight for 3 years and then opening it up. What do you think it looks like? So it's important to know that. Also understand that the chlorine generator, the pH of your pool is going to go up. And it's going to go up for a couple of reasons. One is it makes sodium hydroxide. And so because it makes sodium hydroxide, the pH goes up because of the hydroxide. It also makes hydrogen gas. And hydrogen gas is a bubble. It's an aeration. And because there's a number of plates in the cell, there's turbulence. So you have turbulence and aeration, and the turbulence and aeration is continuous, and it raises the pH of the pool due to CO2 off-gassing. These are some of the things that you need to be aware of. You cannot shock a pool with a chlorine generator. If you need to superchlorinate your pool, hitting the boost button, raises the chlorine level up about double over a 24-hour period. That's not shocking the pool. What you need to do if you need to shock your pool is take some liquid chlorine or Cal-Hypo and put it in the pool and get the chlorine level up very fast right now.
Yeah, we should clarify that boost mode on the salt generator, all it does is increases the 100% output. It doesn't add any more chlorine to the pool per se. It just increases the output of the system. If you're looking for other podcasts, the easiest way to find them is to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every Monday through Friday, I post a new episode here. And if you wanted to find a list of over 1,700 podcasts, which are available for you to listen to at your leisure, go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon, and then there'll be a search box also. You can just type in different subjects, and that podcast I recorded on that will come up. Again, I have over 1,700 podcast episodes for you to listen to and download. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.